I love to hear you sing. And and I know God so appreciates the hearts with which you lift those wonderful voices with. One of the things this morning, and I'm trying to how do I do this without getting political? Because when we're singing that song, and that's a very appropriate song before this morning's lesson, I said spiritual struggle, and we're looking for peace. I flipped on my email this morning, checked it, the very first image that came up. I don't mean to dishearten some of you, but it was something that I've been not concerned about because we're not to worry, turned it over to God, but was the fact that we sent 2 particular planes just over the coast near North Korea yesterday as a result of a missile that they had launched. And I thought of this stock text of where demons or men or whatever may be, we want peace in our spirit. We want peace in our nation. We want peace in the world. But it's hard to get there because there's always someone with an agenda. And I want to tell you this morning, just for a brief moment, I think God has already warned us who's behind that whole agenda. It may be the face of a particular man. It may be some situation that is involved in our world, but there's one person who's behind the spiritual struggle, and his name is Satan. It says finally here. We're getting toward the end of Ephesians 6, and like I tell you, anytime we go through a series in a particular passage, I know some of you are going, yeah, finally we're getting to the end of this series. When in Ephesians 6, it ends on an incredibly powerful note. There's no way to look adequately over the end of the entire chapter this morning. I wanted to look at just those 3 verses. Finally, my brethren, he says, and it's the struggle that we have. We looked last week at the situation in the world where we have our struggle with employees and employers and the jobs that we're supposed to do. Well, he transitions to that into a worldly sense and says, your adversary. 1 Peter 5 talks about him, verses 8 through 9. Be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary the devil walks about like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. Resist him, steadfast in the faith, knowing that the same sufferings are experienced by your brotherhood in the world. Whatever time we live in, from the beginning of the church till the Lord decides to come back, we're going to have struggles. There's going to be the tensions in our world. There's going to be the warning of what's he going to do? That's everybody's biggest fear, especially in reference to North Korea. You know, we just don't know. And we're wondering what we're going to do, and especially in the transition of everything that's going on, and there's all of those particular concerns. And you think in a physical world, well, there's a greater struggle, if you would, in the spiritual realm, in the spiritual world, where Satan continues to prompt the hearts of men and women to make choices concerning things that are not right, and continually putting before us and putting us in situations where we've got to be concerned about the situation we're in based on the choices of other individuals. Revelation chapter 12 also gives us some information about Satan, that he is the accuser of the brethren, that is his sole purpose. He's standing up just as he did, just as clearly as we read in the book of Job, as he walked in to the council of God and he said, have you considered my servant Job? God said that. But at that point, if you remember, God asked him, where have you been? He said, I've been walking about. And he's continuing to do it. He did it then. He's going to continue to do it until the final moment that he is put down forever. As I believe with all of my heart now, he's limited. He's chained in a very real sense, and that God still has control and has him limited, but that does not mean that he doesn't have access to the hearts and minds of people the world over. And there is a struggle for us to make sure that we are fully where we're supposed to be, listening to who we're supposed to be. And there are 3 things that I think he sums up there in the book of Ephesians. And the first one is he talks about in Ephesians chapter 6 and verse 10, As was already read by Jim, I just want to remind us of it. Finally, by them be strong in the Lord and the power of His might, the source of our strength. We need to know where our source of strength is. What does it come from? Well, he gives, I think, two thoughts there. He says, be strong in the Lord. I can be strong in a lot of different, I can get a lot of confidence. I can, and I'll just go ahead with I didn't want to get political this morning, but in one sense, we can have a little bit of confidence in the fact that we are a part of a very strong nation. But I always, when I think about that, I think about all the passages that go in the Old Testament. Some trust in chariots and in horses. We trust in the Lord our God. God forbid whatever's going to happen globally. I don't know, you don't know. The concern that I have at one level is no nation has ever risen above its own inadequacies. That is a historical fact. And the struggles that we have, no matter what they may be in our future, are something that we're going to have to absolutely turn over to God. That the true strength of who we are is not, and hear this very carefully because some of you are going to get a little uneasy when I say this, it's not the flag flying from the Capitol. It's from who our Father is. We've got to try, because it is about the strength that comes from a person. But that person is Jesus Christ. That trust, that confidence, and no matter what happens, no matter the struggle, no matter the decisions that crazy people make, or sane individuals make, God says, I want you to be strong in the only person who has effectively overcome all the situations. He told His disciples in John 16, in the world you will have trouble. My New King James Version says you'll have tribulation. That's just a real fancy word for trouble. You're not going to live anywhere that you're not going to have trouble, not going to have some kind of struggle. But He says, I have come that you might have peace. Peace. You're looking at me like, can I have peace where I am with the uncertainty of the future? Yes. Because no matter what happens, God's got this. No matter, because He has overcome the world. He looked at His disciples as they were afraid of where He was going. I mentioned that last week in John 14. He told them, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. This Holy Spirit's coming to provide comfort. We still have access to that Comforter who both intervenes for us when we don't know what to request and struggle through, and also encourages us through God's Word and empowers us and strengthens us and gives us that peace that passes understanding through Christ. Not only the strength from a person, he says, be strong in the Lord in the power of His might. It comes from a provision that only God can give us. I am inadequate by myself. But when I'm joined with God, and when He is the individual that's empowering me, and I trust whatever He's going to do or whatever He's going to allow, then I have a great deal of comfort that comes in that, because He always makes right choices. Even in the midst of catastrophe, you read the entire book of Revelation, it is about that one faithful promise. You be faithful no matter what happens. You be faithful even if it means you standing up for Christ means your death. We're not there. At least here, we've got brothers and sisters all over this world that are there. Had a dear friend from the Horizons program take a group of 25 young people into one of the most dangerous parts of the world. Ask us to pray for that decision. They were successful in their journey. They're back home safe. But one of the things they told every individual that signed up for that particular journey is, this may be the most dangerous place you've ever been in your life. He told me he was impressed that not one of those 25 young people I mean, they showed them videos, they went through protocols of things they're supposed to say, ways they're supposed to behave, things they're not supposed to do in particular critical situations. And he said, after all of that warning, not one of those 25 backed out. He told me some of the protocols. I'd like to think I'd have had the courage that those young people had going into that environment. To work with the children's home in the area. But it may take one day that kind of courage to live in the United States of America. I'm not trying to be a prophet, don't want to be. Don't have any information you don't have other than God's Word. And the warning that, be strong in the Lord and the power of His might, no matter what happens. That is our true source of strength. Verse 11, he says there's a way to utilize that in chapter 6 when he says, for we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of darkness. That's for put on the whole armor of God, that we may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil, the schemes of the devil. The source of our stability is we're going to be in a battle. Knowing that going in. You know, the source of our bit is that how we are in the struggle. We're in the midst of a struggle that is very real and that we've got to understand God is not going to not let me know that this is going to be tough. One of the real powerful things about the book of Revelation is he told them going in, this is not going to be easy. I get really concerned sometimes when individuals portray, well, when you become a Christian, life's just going to get easy. That is such a lie. Satan redoubles his efforts. Anytime we become apathetic or or get in a situation we think, well, everything's going to be okay, then that's when we need to realize Satan is going to step up and he's going to create a scenario where we have to make sure we're ready. And that's what he tells these Ephesians. That's what's told later to the individuals as Peter writes his letters in the midst of their confusion as they're dispersed. And just no matter where you go, you're going to be tested. He mentions it in the book of Revelation as well. That's why we have to be equipped. That's what we don't have time to talk about in detail this morning. Lord willing, next Sunday we're going to look at the armor of God. Every nation is looking to improve their ability to protect themselves. At least many times that's the guise of research. Whether it is defensive or offensive is in the mind of the individual involved. When Paul talks about the spiritual armor, he talks about both defensive and offensive parts of our weaponry, if you would. And that equipping does something, as he says later in the text, when it says it allows us to stand against the wiles of the devil. So it enables us to be ready whatever happens, which means it's going to protect us, but it's also going to provide for us in those moments when we need it for us to be aggressive. In the name of God, by His Spirit. Because you're not given armor simply to protect yourself. Sometimes we have to do those things that are going to say, we have the ability, we have the wherewithal to make sure and defend ourselves. Now, here's the real struggle within mind. Wait a minute. I'm talking spiritually. And in many ways, we have to make sure that because in this same context, in this same old thought, Paul will later in Romans 12 talk about that real dilemma between our own personal protection and that struggle of the fact that there are governing authorities. Every nation since the beginning of time that has decided to choose not to follow God and not to just stay under His protective care, which is exactly what Jerusalem did, what Israel did, when they said, we want a king. We want to be like the nations around us. Well, once you do that, then automatically someone else has got to be the position of authority. Someone else has got to make the decision about, okay, what are our laws? What are those things that are going to be right? What are the things that are wrong? What are those things that are going to be punished if they're done and they're not right? It's interesting to read back through the Levitical Code and the laws of punishment in the Levitical Code. They were harsh. They make the laws in the United States look a little meek. But God had a message for the people of God. If you're going to maintain who you are, if you're going to maintain your integrity as a nation, and if you're going to be my people and make choices to do good and not do evil, then when you do something wrong, it's going to be punished, and it's going to be done so in a way that it's obvious that better not happen again. See, this is a side of God that sometimes we go, I like to talk about the grace of God and the love of God and the mercy of God. And in Romans chapter 11, Paul in a very powerful way says, behold therefore the goodness, yes, and the severity of God. And as He equips us in a spiritual sense, this becomes, please hear this carefully, a weapon that will protect us, but a weapon that will also defend us. And in that way, we are enabled to be individuals who are in the army of God. We sing the children's song at VBS, marching in the Lord's army. When we sing that, I think sometimes we're totally unaware of the fact that that army has never failed to exist on the face of the earth. That there is a battle in the spiritual realm that he's talking about here. And that's where he talks about the source of our struggles as well. In chapter 12, when he says, for we do not wrestle against flesh and blood. Wait a minute, Kirk, you just mentioned our tension even globally and the show of strength that we're having to do just to make sure somebody understands who's still strong. That's in the physical world. And hear this carefully. In its truest sense, there's not a thing that you and I can do about it because we've turned our allegiance over to somebody who's in control. And however you feel about that, and I'm sure that'd be a diverse discussion in this room, you've got to realize one signature fact. That struggle is one over which you have absolutely, you go, well, but I can voice my opinion. Absolutely. That's been done in one sense. That's been voiced. And now we are living in the result of that choice. Praying as each one of us prays as we do. 1 Timothy says to pray for those who are in power. Whether we agree or disagree with policy or procedure, we pray for that individual that he or she makes choices based upon what is the best for not only this nation, but also for the family of God as it exists in the world here and universally. But he says now you got to understand that the greatest enemy you have isn't in a particular nation. The enemy is Satan. Behind every wrong decision, on whatever level that wrong decision is made, whether it's in family, whether it's in a corporation, or whether it's in a nation, that wrong decision is prompted by someone who is behind the scenes and manipulating the situation by the temptations and the struggles that he presents. And the same offer he made to Jesus after his struggle in the desert is the same offer he's making today. If you'll do this, all the nations of the world will be yours. There's somebody out there in our world that's believing that lie from Satan. You make this choice. You make this, if you would, dismissal. You make this situation. And you will have the power like no one else has ever had. And somebody's listening to that voice, and that's Satan's voice. Prompting that. The enemy is Satan, because he says we wrestle not against flesh and blood. And we got to know who the enemy is, and we got to know who the enemy isn't. Now, I know some of you are going, now what are you saying about this? We're not supposed to address the flesh and blood issue. I'm not saying that. As long as the world has existed, and it's something that has been stated biblically, there will be wars and rumors of wars, not only at a national level. There will be tensions and struggles in state levels and in homes and in particular wherever we are, because as long as the world exists, there are people. And Satan is going to be able to say, oh, go ahead and do this. It'll be okay. It won't hurt anybody. Or God forbid, on the other hand, if you make this choice, it's okay for you to harm certain individuals because you have the right to do this. And that's Satan constantly giving that message and communicating that that's the agenda. So in Ephesians 6, what is he? For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of darkness of this age, against the spiritual hosts of wickedness in the heavenly places. So you're going, wow, that's the winds and the waves. Well, here's the major source of comfort in the middle of all that. The same individual that walked the face of the earth some 2,000 years ago in the middle of a storm said, peace be still, is the same individual that's in control today. And he's enlisting us. And he says, will you put on? Will you become? We sing, and I think the song, if I remember the exact words, I may never march in the infantry. I may never ride in the cavalry. I may never shoot the artillery. Because I think that song needs to be upgraded to our particular current status. But I'm in the Lord's army. And that's really my only question to you this morning. At a time I believe with all of my heart that we need to make sure that we're engaged. Because one of our greatest weapons, we're going to find that out next week, is prayer. One of our greatest accesses to if you would, the most significant military force that still exists, and it's not located on a map. The headquarters is still in heaven. Be strong in the Lord. No matter what headline, no matter what hiccup, or what situation you may be facing. See, because your battle this morning may not be on a global level. Your battle may be what you just heard about from a physician this week. Not exactly what you expected. Maybe a little different. A little adjustment's going to have to be made. Got to figure out what's the next step. Be strong in the Lord. Your struggle may not be on some physical level. It may be some spiritual level, knowing what the next step or next choice may be in your life. It may be a significant choice of where I'm going to go to college, or what I'm going to do in reference to work for the rest of my life, or whatever that particular moment is. Would you be strong in the Lord and in the power of His might? And you will be able to stand. Not maybe, you will. That's the promise. God says, trust me in this. You are not by yourself. I am with you. And that's the signature promise He's made. Look back in every episode. And I started to do that this morning, and time won't allow me to do that this morning. If you start looking back in every episode where individuals were struggling. We looked a couple of weeks ago, we looked at Elijah. Who in the greatest moment of his life, after his greatest victory, one lady tells him, I'm taking you out. He runs into a cave and hides. Until he's reminded, you're not by yourself. Get up. I love the way that he's in there going, yeah. And the Spirit of the Lord comes into him and says, you get up, eat something, and get back out here. Because you're not the only one. I'm with you. The writer in Hebrews reminds us of something he said at least, and I think I remember this, at least 10 times through the course of the Bible, the statement is made, I will never leave you nor forsake you. I'm here. Whatever you're facing, wherever you're headed, whoever you're up against, He's not facing just you, He's facing you and me. So I hope this morning, whatever your journey holds, and whatever our journey holds, that our greatest strength comes from the only source, and that is God. And that stabilizes us, that because we're equipped for the struggle ahead. Because there's going to be one. Again, not a prophet nor the son of one. Just the reality of living and life. There will be struggles. It's who we trust and how much we realize. If we make sure we're in the Lord's army. If we can assist you this morning to enlist. That's one of the options. It's voluntary. But there's a commitment level. Because once you tell God, I'm with you, I'm for you, then that means He's in charge and He's the captain. And then it's yes, sir. Remember, that's what the song says, right? Yes, sir. So if we can assist you with that through penitent faith, confession, and baptism, we're ready to do that this morning. If you've done something that's against code, we're blessed by a lot of individuals who served in the military in this. Sometimes when you violate code, then there has to be a correction that is made. And that's the wonderful thing about being in the Lord's army. I can step up and say, Lord, I did this. I'm sorry. He says, you're forgiven. Let's go forward. Get back in line. Let's keep going. That's the beauty of a relationship with Him as Commander-in-Chief. So any way we can assist you this morning, would you come as we stand and as we sing?